Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lesia Kohut and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are?
Honey Bunch, also known as Glenn Sheridan. Introduce yourself. Say hi.
Hello, my name's Glenn Sheridan. I'm the husband previously mentioned, and I sit on the couch many nights a week with my wife, Lesia, talking about the stuff that we're going to talk about today and in other podcasts. So really excited about this because there are so many cool minds that we're going to encounter. And today we have one of them, even though I hardly know you, Kelly. It's going to be really cool. So here we go. Thanks.
All right. And so like I mentioned, today our guest is Kelly Bershinsky, Reverend Kelly Bershinsky, who I met through the Global Truth Center in Los Angeles, which is where I have been studying for the past 2 years and recently graduated as a licensed spiritual practitioner. And Kelly is one of the newly minted ministers at that spiritual center. And we met a few months back when I reached out to the community when I was having some challenges. And Kelly was one of the first responders. And after one conversation, we just totally hit it off and have also had many a conversation since then about lots of things, from what is consciousness to what did, some particular reading from class mean to, I had this question on my exam. I don't know if the answer was correct as we discussed it in class, to vegan cooking, hiking, just all sorts of stuff. And pretty much every conversation we have, there is some bout of hilarious, uproarious laughter at some point, because Kelly is also quite the prankster and joker and has such a wicked sense of humor. So, Reverend Kelly, who do you think you are?
Well, if I only knew that, I probably wouldn't even be on this podcast if I knew for sure. I at the end of the day, who am I? I think that is my spiritual path is just that, diving into that question and others like it of, okay, I do things in the world. I've been in casinos or casino management of some sort for 3 decades. I am now a minister of religious science, all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, those are just things. Those are labels. Those are things that I do. And I don't think any of them really defines, at least fully, who I am. And so for me, that person, that entity is just the person in search of further growth, further expansion, further rather than necessarily coming up with the answer, about staying in the question, about continuing to question what life is. What am I doing here? What is my role in this, that, or the other? And after a lot of years of studying, I probably get closer, but I don't have a pat answer. For me, it's just about growth, about learning, about knowing that regardless of what I do or achieve or anything, that every bit of it is just a stepping off point to whatever's next.
Mm-hmm. And so what I'm wondering is, we've had a few conversations over the last couple of months. what is life looking like right now? I mean, there's for the last few months, at least here in Canada, which is for those people who don't know where we're coming from, Glenn and I, we are coming from Victoria, Canada, in British Columbia. And so COVID-19, the global pandemic, that really sort of started to become a thing very prevalent here in, I would say, the beginning of March. Like that's when I was working where I was working. And then 3 weeks later, the state of emergency, came into effect and has been extended several times since then. That really changed how people lived, how people showed up, how people related to each other. For some people, they felt like they, first all of a sudden had to stop working, but then kind of embraced that not working, and it became kind of like a holiday or an extended snow day. And there was this discovery of, I love hiking, I love baking bread, I love having time off to do all these things that I haven't had time to do because I've been working so much. Or some other people, would realize that even with that extra amount of time, they still weren't doing the things that they wanted to do. And why was that? Why was that happening now that I have all this extra time? And then there were some people, I mean, I was one of those who kept working for the longest time. And eventually I made a decision in May that I was going to leave what I was doing, and I was going to devote my energy and consciousness to the work I feel called to do full time. And that for me was such an amazing and empowering decision. It was kind of scary because even though I didn't feel great in the job that I was working in, it was the known, so it was comfortable to some degree. And just knowing that on these days, during these hours, that's where I would be. Because of that, there was a paycheck that would come in. There were certain people that I would get a chance to talk to. Then there was, some comfort in that. But to decide very consciously that, I am spending a lot of energy and consciousness doing something that I'm not entirely sure I want to be doing anymore, and I'm not using my energy in a way that feels good. To come to the decision that I want to do something different. I don't know how that looks. I don't know where that income is going to come from. And to just be open to whatever wanted to bubble up and out, that has been a super exciting place to be in the last, month and a half or so, especially as class ended. And I no longer had that anchor every Tuesday night for 3 hours or or more hours sometimes, where I was in my practitioner studies class with this group of people, expanding our minds and blowing our hearts open and learning what we were learning through our spiritual studies. So I'm wondering, what's it been like for you, these last few months? How has your life changed, unfolded in ways that, you didn't necessarily imagine or foresee? And what have those changes, gifted you, I guess, in a way that, just, how have things been?
Well, I saw a social media post a while back about the time off due to COVID-19 and all that stuff. And it was from someone who said, I've always said that I would clean my house if I had enough time. And they said, I've now realized that that's not the reason.
I saw that same post, yeah.
But it's been really a gift for me in many ways. Starting out with finishing up the ministerial program that I was in. I suppose that I would have figured out how to get through that anyway, how to finish it had I been working full time, although there was a lot to it. And there was, a ton of stuff at the end where I was completing a thesis and putting a lot of time and effort into that and having it proofread and edited, and then, et cetera, the back and forth with that. And and just everything, studies for a final exam and ministerial panels and all those kinds of things. And it gave me a lot of time to really be able to put the time and effort into that I wanted to put into it, as opposed to it being, sort of hodgepodge or yes, I slogged through it. So I had the time really to devote to it, and time to devote not only to that program, but to my spiritual process, my spiritual, the things I do in the morning when I wake up. And I have the luxury just to spend as much time on that as I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an amazing gift, really. As opposed to waking up, rushing through meditation and reading and writing and all of those things, rushing through that, and then rushing off to work and continuing that pace of rushing through everything all day long. It gives me a real sense that this is a little more like what life probably should be like, where I live at a pace that suits me, that really jibes with, you asked who I am, that really jibes with who I am. And that for me is not necessarily sprinting from point A to point B to point C all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that really goes against the grain of who I am, frankly. And doesn't mean that I don't do a lot of things or accomplish a lot of things, but the way I go about them is not just, pedal to the metal every single day. Doesn't work well for me. So those things have all been really incredible things. One thing that I'm looking at now, I don't know this for sure. I haven't heard a date or anything like that, but I believe that our business, our card room, our casino will be opening up sometime in the next, reasonable short term. There are some things that are closer into the LA area that were in the same industry, and some of those have opened, and we haven't yet, but I suspect that is on the horizon. And while I will be going back to that, as far as I know at this stage, I know for sure that it's going to be under different terms for me personally, and those terms really are something that this time off and time away from that has really called to my attention. It will have to work for me, and it will have to work for my life and what I want in my life. And if it doesn't, then the job will no longer outrank my life. What I've really come to understand is that my time, my life is not for sale to the highest bidder. And I've lived it in that way sometimes in the past, but that standard is no longer okay for me. And that was really, while I know that anyway, I know that in the back of my mind, this time away from that work has really illustrated that to me. It's really driven that point home for me. And that's a big deal for me.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to so much of what you just talked about. And I know Glenn had, I think, a pretty different experience because he has been working the entire time. For me,
my apologies to you, sir.
Well, he can talk about that a bit more in a second, because he's created a pretty sweet deal for himself, with the job that he has, because he basically listens to podcasts and audiobooks and lectures and stuff all day long, expanding his mind and learning and just, being a human sponge, the entire day. Yeah, you can see his head is, so big it barely fits through the house door sometimes. But getting back to just briefly, what you talked about, when I was thinking of what day to leave my job, then I was thinking, well, if I leave on this day, then I'll get the stat holiday coming before then. And I thought, oh, come on, like really, have I not learned, anything about consciousness and coming from a place of lack and whatever from, any of the spiritual studies that I've been undertaking, for the last 4 years. If I do it on this day, then this. If I do it on this day, then this. And what I consciously decided was that I wanted to leave so that I had a week before my oral panels for practitioner studies where I had no commitments. And so I did. And originally it was actually going to be on Mother's Day, which was a Sunday because I worked on Sundays. But then because of circumstances, the owners decided to close the store on Sundays. And so just a few days before that Sunday, I found out I actually wouldn't be working on Mother's Day, which made our daughter very happy because we could actually hang out together, because most Mother's Days in her lifetime, I've been working. And so what I found was that week leading up to my oral panels, which I had always been super stoked about and just knew was going to be such a fun, engaging, joyful experience. It's like I just knew it. I had that entire week to just be and I did a little bit of studying and brushing up on some stuff that I still wasn't clear on, sort of like from our, the stuff you had to remember. But otherwise it was just being, just meditating when and how I wanted to meditate, going into spirit breath meditation with Dr. James every single morning, at 9 o'clock with that collection of people that tend to be there from day to day, reading what I wanted to read, sleeping if I wanted to take a nap. And then on the day, planning those, 4 hours leading up to my time slot, and just allowing myself the luxury, like you said, of time and just of not having all these things and tasks and obligations and work crammed into there, to the point where, this thing that was the anchor for me for the last 2 years, my practitioner studies, where I designed my life so that everything, even my family, revolved around that I still towards the end, was able to do that in such a bigger, more profound, more spacious and delicious way, that morning while I was doing, I think, my second meditation, a Joe Dispenza, tuning into new potentials. And one of those new potentials was the successful completion of my oral panels, and just knowing fun and joy and engagement, and that I was going to get to do a kick-ass treatment instead of, an invocation. And at the end, it was going to be like a big fat yes, from everyone. And I could feel during that meditation, I could just, in every fiber of my being, I could feel in my body, it's happened. It's happened. It was a yes. I'm a practitioner. This actual panel is just a formality now. And so when it came to it actually happening, I had my outfit all picked out, my hair was perfect, I had my jewelry, and then when I sat down to do it, like everything that I had thought about, that it wasn't going to take the whole 45 minutes, that it was going to be fun and engaging, and there was going to be laughter and joy, and it was going to be a big fat yes, at the end. Every single one of those things happened exactly the way I thought and felt in my body that it was going to happen. And it just felt so amazing that I had all that time leading up to it to just really know and experience and just be so firmly rooted, in that creation. It was amazing. So yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you said. Okay, Mahoney, and that's Glenn, one of my names for Glenn. You've had a different kind of experience because you have been working the entire time, and then recently you stepped into a board of directors position at Unity Victoria, which has
Yeah.
been pretty juicy and meaty.
Okay. Yeah, it was a very different experience. And I think I was glad of having the more or less nonstop routine of what I work in a factory at the moment. So it's like, it's fairly, like your body can do certain things and make things and just sort of take you out of what your mind wants to do. You know, there are times, of course, when you got to like be completely in sync and like, okay, I'm focusing on this. This is important. But some of it is just repetitive, and it's like, okay, I can do other things. And I've learned. It's been an interesting time to learn. You know, since around February, March, when I started paying attention to sort of like the whole health aspect and the panic rising in the world kind of thing. Because one of my core beliefs is that I live in a safe universe. I'm safe. I trust in life. I know I'm fine. Those around me are fine, you know. And it was weird. I would get little sort of indicators that yes, you're fine, everything's fine. Because even when they did layoffs at work, because things started shutting down, they still kept some people on, and I was one of the people they kept on, even though I'm not one of the newest people, you know, not one of the older employees, but yeah, I just took the time to kind of absorb what was happening in the world, particularly in the UK and the US, because Canada seemed to be just doing its thing and BC was doing its thing, and I was keeping an eye on what Ontario was going through in regards to the response to COVID and everything. But I just thought, to me, it seemed like this is like a test of the belief systems of everyone involved. And I know not everyone on the planet is involved in this, because some people are just blithely living their lives and it doesn't affect them. In some way it will sort of cause and effect wise down the road. But I just think, yeah, this is like, I was saying at the beginning, this is like a test of faith, but that's not quite the same thing. It's like, it's an opportunity to pause and zoom out. We'll get into Zoom in a second, but like Zoom is a weird word because it's like, it's an optical thing, but it's like, it just gives you perspective when you kind of lift away from where you have been, as you were saying, Kelly, like just doing your routine and prioritizing what's important and fitting all these things in, and then, you know, giving yourself these little rewards of this and that when you get home or whatever, and just feeling good, and then optimally going to sleep with this kind of like, oh, you know, everything's fine, I got through the day. But like to have your whole day shifted for most people in the world, not exactly me, but I was affected in different ways, but I would imagine for most people it was like, oh, okay, I guess I get to just put everything on pause for a second, look at who I am and what I am and what my roles are and what I believe and what I think is important, and maybe change some of those things and have, to me, it's sort of, you know, the way the world works is just, it's what's really going on at sort of the quantum level is like, you're just choosing this over this all the time. You know, this is the probability I choose, but it's happening just so rapidly that it seems like it's a progression of, you know, cause, effect, and reflection, whatever, cause and effect. But something happened that blew a hole in that whole linear timeline thing. Just said like, no, hold on a second. We're just going to spin this thing. And now we're looking at it from a different perspective. And now you know, you get to choose a lot more than you think you do, you know? And I think it has led some people to panic because, of course, it immediately brings out fear response or confusion and things like that in how they have dealt with things like masks and you know, trying to decide whether to open their business again, or, you know, there's so much going on. And then, of course, the recent street presence, we'll call it, that has again gone in sort of two directions, primarily of like peaceful awareness and protest, and then the other thing, which is, we won't get into that for right now because that's a whole other kettle of fish. But yeah, I'm grateful that I'm going through this. Most of the people I belong to and community online, they're kind of taking that approach, even though they're from very different backgrounds. They're like, oh, this is amazing. We get to go through this learning experience of seeing people for who they are. There's a lot of judgment involved with that, but like being able to just go, no, it's okay. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Like it's just maybe this, and maybe it'll work out fine in the end, or maybe it's terrible right now. And if you hold on to that terribleness, that feeling of panic or lack or whatever, then yeah, you're going to be in for a bumpy ride for a little while. But yeah, I'm so grateful to just like even overhearing what Lesia's going through with her classes and preparing stuff. I'll hear snippets, and it's like, I have an amazing life. You know, I get to hear people being positive and being enriched with their loop of experience. Like I know this is what I'm putting out, and I'm not necessarily getting back what I think I've put out, but I'll deal with it because I know all the time I'm in control of this. You know, some people would say we're in control of nothing, but I think, you know, even our daughter, I think, has picked up on some of this stuff and just it's helped her ground her experience of this not being in school and things like that. Like everyone is going through a version of this. There's very few people that have not been forced to kind of force themselves, we'll say, to just say, hold on a second, and just make that second last for, you know, as long as it is necessary for them to reflect and process and just, you know, see who they are after that. That was a long rant. Anyway.
That was no rant. That was a share.
I would just want to say a couple of things. First of all, Lesia, that might be your comment. Might be the first time I've ever heard the term "kick-ass treatment," and and I think there's a great use for that. I have occasionally, though, heard the "goddamn treatment."
Okay.
And this is something from I don't know who coined that phrase, but it's kind of like the kick-ass treatment. It's like I've had all I can take. I'm at my wit's end. God damn it, I'm not taking this anymore. And this is what has to happen now, you know? Yeah. And treating kind of from that basis. I know I heard Dr. Maureen Hoyt say that before, but I'm not sure it's her original material. But you know what I am fascinated by really is in this whole thing with COVID-19 and the shutdown and the arguments about it and all those kinds of things. As you talk about, Glenn, about choice and about how we deal with that, how we look at that, how how we proceed from here. I've heard so many times that this is a reset for us. This is the universe coming to some better place of oneness, or et cetera, et cetera. And okay, fine. I mean, I how do you go out and prove that for sure or whatever, you know? But what I think, for me, what it's about is I think it can be all of those things. But it depends on what we do with it, how we look at it, how we choose from this point forward. we have an amazing thing that has happened in this shutdown is that scientists have been able to gain data that without this shutdown would have been impossible. Things like the air clearing, the oceans clearing up in certain places. I saw just an incredible article about whales and certain species of whales who some scientists who study them are now really hopeful that their breeding patterns are going to go back to normal, at least for now, because the noise levels in the ocean have reduced to a level that these particular whales are not, they don't suffer such great anxiety and stress because of the noise levels in the ocean.
Wow.
These were things that were, without this shutdown, you couldn't study really. You couldn't really, you could compare, but from how it was a decade ago or a century ago or something like that, but to actually freeze this moment in time sort of, and then to be able to build data around that, I think is fascinating. And it gives us incredible scientific data about what is possible for us with so many discussions around climate change and environmental destruction and all those sorts of things. And we have, I think it's so cool that we now have a body of evidence to suggest that there is enormous possibility. Now, what do we do with that? But anyway, I think that's an incredible outcome of this time as well. And so anyway, that was I don't know if that's a rant either, qualifies for a rant either, Lesia, but anyway, just came to mind.
No rants. I mean, there's so many things that come to mind when I listen to you both speak, and even, I mean, I'm reminded of why I actually reached out to the practitioner corps, when you and I, or because of how, or what, and then subsequently you and I connected. It was because I was still working, and things really heated up with COVID-19, and I remember at the beginning thinking, I'm in practitioner studies, I'm with this ongoing spiritual education, I know how to use my mind. I know how to think, and I'm okay with what's going on. I know that I am infinitely more powerful and more creative and more resilient than any bug that is going around, than any opinions that are, thrown, or judgments or whatever. And for a couple of weeks, I felt fine. And then it started getting more challenging for me to stay in that knowing, to just remember that that's what I know. And I just felt this incredible pull into race consciousness, or consensus. And I just, kept like, okay, but this is what I know, but this is what's going on. But this is what I know, but this is what's going on. And it got to the point where, it was, the people I worked with, it was the people who walked through the, store to come and buy their stuff. It was what was happening in the news. It was what was happening with people we knew. And then as, protocol came down after protocol, and then mandate after mandate, and what's a protocol versus a mandate, what's optional versus mandatory, and all the different levels of awareness and attention and consciousness, and just navigating the different emotions that, were coming in through that door, and, at work. And then even Glenn and I talking about things when, we'd come home from work, and how we were, at different levels. And there were times where I just thought, I don't need you to tell me that, I am bigger than what's going on. I'm feeling so weird and conflicted about the fact that, like I should know better because of what I'm studying, but I'm having a really hard time actually knowing better. So I kind of need to feel the feels here. Like I need to allow whatever is coming through to, to make its way through, bubble up and out. And there were times where it felt like we were at odds with that. And that was not an easy place to be because I was feeling so stretched and torn in not a very good way at work, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, while also being in school, which was really, ramping up towards the end with our finals and everything that was happening. And it felt like a lot. And so, even now, I go still shop at the store where I used to work because it's an amazing place and has such great stuff. And it's still, like all of the tape is on the floor, go in this direction, stand here, like all these barriers and stuff because, they're still in place. They still have to be. And it's just such a different environment from what it was when I first started there. The job that I was doing when I left there was not the job that I was hired for. And to just work through all of that and, what's my place and who am I and why am I feeling so challenged in practicing what I'm learning? That was a really, really interesting experience to have. And it just, for me, got to the point where, like I said before in the conversation, I really, ended up deciding, asking myself, what do I want to spend my energy on? What do I want to focus on? What do I want to, spend my consciousness on? And in the end, it's like, not that, this. And in making that decision, and since making that decision, it's just felt so much better. It just so much easier, like not, and there, I mean, it took 2 weeks for me to work on a pitch that I'm making to a high school for a program that I've come up with. And it took 2 weeks for that to really sort of be fleshed out and honed into what it is now. Whereas the online discussion group that I have on Tuesdays that Kelly was, a guest at talking about spiritual bypass, that just during meditation, like, whew, done deal, full package came up. I sat down at the computer, wrote it all out in one page, sent it off to our minister here. She loved it. And it all within a week just happened. So, even still, there's stuff that is coming out, stuff that I'm hearing and feeling and envisioning and acting upon, from, different levels of awareness and what is mine to do and what requires my attention right now, with these, sometimes it feels like there's 100 things vying for my attention, but what requires my attention right now? And that, I get to choose. I always get to choose. And it's been really a lot easier to choose because I have these amazing prayer partners that I meet with every single week. And one of the things that I've been asking that they know for me for the last few weeks is that this unlimited focus, the infinite expansive universe, that infinite potentiality, that I can use that, I can apply that, and I can take all of that limitlessness and just, hone it down into this precise laser sharp focus on what requires my attention right now. And so that's been fantastic. What's happening there?
My dogs are rattling the door. They're going a little crazy.
Ah.
I had to open the door and let them in.
Are they gonna say hello?
I don't know. They might. Bella's just kind of hanging out. She got in the room and she's happy about that. Something you said, Lesia, that I really liked is about allowing what's going on within you to come up, to bubble up, as you put it, to allow that. And I'll tell you for sure, that is a huge part of my spiritual practice. It is the crux of my meditation. I'm not, I do some guided meditation and have, but that's not the crux of what I do for meditation. My meditation really is about allowing whatever is coming up within me to come up. Have to not fight it, to not resist it, to not do anything, not agree, disagree, or anything else, but simply to allow it. And it's really, it's simple to talk about, but it is life-changing for me. And as you talked about choice as well, that you know, we're a choice, we're always a choice, I always get to choose. My personal philosophy around that is that choice is kind of this theoretical concept until you can allow that stuff and then still choose. In other words, if I can't allow what is going on within me to go on, if I cannot allow that, if I cannot make room for it, then I'm not choosing, I'm reacting. And it becomes, you know, if there's something that pushes my buttons, so to speak, pushes my buttons in a certain way, and I can't simply allow that to happen. Like I have no room in my body and my mind and my consciousness to allow this. I absolutely cannot allow it. Then I just react to it. And sometimes what comes up within is not comfortable. You know, it's not easy. It's not comfortable. It's not pleasant. And yet, if I can't make room for those things, then I really limit my choice around them. Is what I think. And it makes sense, at least in my mind, that that's what I see going on in the news so much, is that people are reacting. It's not a real reasoned sort of a choice sometimes that I make or that others make, but it is simply a reaction to this visceral thing that doesn't feel very good, that I cannot allow. And so as a means of moving past it or disallowing it or somehow fighting against it, then I simply react. And that is somehow less than choice, at least from a reasoned perspective.
I guess what comes to mind for me when I'm hearing you talk, for me, I'm thinking that that's, you know, and it's interesting because it's still, it seems like a choice, just one that isn't conscious or aware. So then is it actually a choice? So you
well, I think that sounds correct also. Yet choice really is about, okay, there's option A, B, or, you know, however many options there are. And I think through that, and then I pick one of those. And in doing so, I feel pretty free around it. I feel like at least the choice I'm making is not going to require great suffering on my part. In other words, I don't feel deprived because I've made this choice. I don't feel upset because I've reasoned this out and I'm really free. I'm free to choose this without, you know, further suffering. And if I'm not free to do that, if I'm simply reacting, some old habit, some old pattern, some old idea or thought process that I really haven't allowed. Allowing, for me, being able to allow something is what allows it, is what allows it to move and frees up choice for me, frees up my ability to choose in a way that I don't feel like I'm suffering. And if I feel like the choice involves suffering, then how likely am I to choose that? I'm not going to deliberately choose to suffer. I'm probably going to stay with some old habit, some old pattern. I see it all the time around addiction, around things like that. I experienced this very same thing with my own history of alcoholism. And the idea for me in that, in this kind of concept that I'm talking about, choice or the lack thereof, is that if I am addicted to anything, to alcohol or to drugs or to whatever it might be, my experience of it, at least, was that if I have decided to stop, then I really should not experience this thought process any longer that tells me to go have a drink. Just stop, I have a drink or have a whatever. That thought process should go away. Well, in the early days of my deciding that I no longer wanted to drink, that it didn't support who and what I wanted to be, that thought process would still occur. And I would I just hit the floor. I would just be floored because I felt so good about this new thing. I'm gonna stop drinking, and consequently, I thought this thought should never happen again in my space. I couldn't allow it. I couldn't make room for it and not react to it. And it sounds like a little thing to talk about, but when I understood that thought does not have to go away, that I can make room for it or for anything else to occur within my mental space and still choose, then I was at choice. Then I really regained the power of choice, the power of decision from a personal standpoint. And so does a thought about alcohol ever come up for me? It does, in sort of a laughable way, in a way of, I'll drive around and there'll be a bar or something, where many years ago I would frequent. Well, sure, thoughts come up about all sorts of things. It comes up in a way that I know it no longer tugs at me. It's just like this little passing blip of a thought around which I have absolute choice. So anyway, that is my concept about allowing and allowing as a means to be fully at choice.
That's really interesting, and I want to recap it, but I feel like I can't because I'm still chewing on it. And part of it is because I can personally relate to what you've just talked about because of what I went through with alcohol addiction. And that there's, when it comes to alcohol, when it comes to smoking, those two things are just not a part of my life experience anymore. They are just not, they're not who I am. They're not a part of my makeup. I feel so definitive and steadfast in the knowing that they just don't belong, in who I am and how I show up. Where I will face challenges from time to time And I've, thought when I'm sort of in it, it's like, I'll think about, why can't I just think about this the same way that I think about, drinking and about cigarette smoking, which are just, it's beyond opinions anymore. It's just, that's not part of my life. It's food. It's disordered eating, or a relationship with food that is not the most solid or grounded in nourishment. And it's fascinating to me, because there's the same type of addictive behavior, transferred over to, food that there used to be with smoking or with alcohol. And so even, and that's not a huge thing for me anymore, but it comes up from time to time, and I can see it happening, and I know what the triggers are. And I'm so grateful for the spiritual practices that I have, and for the prayer partners that I have, and just all the resources that I can turn to and draw from, because it's choosing, this is the way I want to go, this is the way I want to show up. And it's sometimes people think about choice, it's either this or this. I mean, there's a myriad of choices, and sometimes we're not even aware of what they could be, but like, they all exist, they're all possible, they're all even probable, according to how you start to move forward in the choosing or deciding process. And so I think, I thank you for bringing this up, because this is something that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to on some level, depending on where they aren't necessarily in right relationship with something in their lives, whether it be a behavior, whether it be another person, whatever. But that allowing that you're talking about for this, and I mean, this also starts making me think of spiritual bypass, and how too often people don't allow, and especially if there is spirituality in someone's life, that can be a band-aid, can sort of end up being a band-aid solution, or an excuse to not allow for stuff to come up. I feel like I'm going off on a few tangents here, but to allow for stuff to come up, to work through whatever it is that wants to be known, that is just like on its way up already. Just open yourself up and allow for it to come in whatever way it's coming, and to not try and direct it or outline it, as would we say, to control it or manipulate it or to will it in a certain direction. Because it ends up foundationally coming from something that is just inherently at its very core good, which makes me think of, one day you sort of brought up the question, for the best and highest, is it really, is it always for the best and highest good? How do we know? There are a few little things. I hear your voice in my head with these questions, making me, want to question stuff. So I don't really think that was anything, definitive in terms of a statement, but just, thinking about what you have shared.
Mm. Well, for me, it's this idea came from my own experience for sure, but being around spiritual centers, around spiritual classes, and so often hearing the idea that we are always at choice. And I understand that, I guess. And yes, if I choose a behavior or a pattern or something that even is bad for me, is unsupportive, that yes, I have chosen that, and based on a law of cause and effect, whatever cause I set in motion, I will experience whatever comes out of that. But my point of that really is that choice is supposed to be a conscious thing. That unconscious part, that unconscious use of choice is really default.
Right.
And it's, you know, it comes from a place of not really being free. You know, I haven't worked through all the stuff. I haven't done that work to really be able to be free to look at the option, to look at the range of options and really deliberately choose one based on what I want in my life or who I know myself to be, et cetera, that I'm simply defaulting.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Sheridan.
Yeah, I did read your paper, and I've experienced what you're talking about a little bit as well with those sort of platitudes of, you know, like things being in divine order, like as a response, people saying that as a response, you know, using affirmations to kind of get through experiences they're just not comfortable with. And I've only recently done any kind of work on like shadow work. And so I'm, you know, I've kind of opened up that barrel and stuck my head in a little bit, but I haven't like bathed in it all the way because I just, I can see the value of the shadow work stuff in terms of understanding what spiritual bypassing is and why it's not a good idea. I'm still struggling a little bit with it because you mentioned choice there, Kelly, a second ago. The choice, like, I think I like to look at it from a perspective of we're at choice and we can always realign with who we are and come at any experience from that and just focus on like on a vibrational level. Okay, this is who I am. This is what I want for myself. This is what I know about myself. I am open to experiences that enrich me and are beneficial to others, sort of as a byproduct of me being my truest self. And obviously I have struggles as well with understanding political things, and just I get sucked into that very quickly. And I'm getting better and better at like yanking myself out of the way of the freight train of like, you know, putting politics into everything is just not a good solution really as a life sort of choice. So I appreciate what you wrote in your paper because it does give some examples of spiritual bypassing and how it's sort of works as a framework and how it's easy to fall into those sort of traps. But I think my ultimate challenge to the idea of spiritual bypassing as being important is that just as the global community has sort of shifted on a dime, it's always available to us to sort of enter into a new paradigm or a new reality. And it's like walking down a corridor and every single door is like, oh, wow, what's this, you know? And it's all available. It's just that we're very focused and we're very narrowly like blinkered in our expectations of what is available to us from moment to moment, never mind day to day. So I think I think there's a part of me that thinks there's something with what's called spiritual bypassing that is okay, because looked at from a different perspective, it's just like a person deciding, okay, I'm experiencing this issue and I don't like how it feels. That's not me. And instead of like letting things bubble up and experiencing anger or whatever, or depression or whatever, I think there's something to be said for just saying, okay, if I am infinite intelligence, if everything's available to me at all times, if God is everywhere in all times, in all places, then it's a matter of zooming out and just pinpointing where I want to be in the big picture, and then focusing in on that and saying, I choose to be that person there, and then re-anchor myself through who I am in that new kind of time-space reality, because I've just entered into a new probable universe or parallel universe or whatever you want to call it, which again is like, you can't prove that in scientific terms other than getting into the whole quantum thing. That's a whole, we're not going to get into that. But I really appreciate your fleshing it out for me, and these examples even today you've given me, and having experienced what Lesia is talking about, like this kind of, we're not in sync with our reactions to the initial chaotic energy that came out of the COVID response around March, April. It wasn't fun, and I don't want to think about it. That's my whole thing, is like, I've moved past it. I don't need to go back there. I like, going back there is as much of a choice and analyzing how I felt about it, rather than staying in this moment and saying, I feel good in this moment, and just, that's my new reality. That's my new path. I can stand in one place and chuck rocks and feel better in the moment, and then those rocks make a new path and whatever. But I think I'm just always looking for the best analogy for this stuff, because it's not, there's something intangible about it, right? That's the whole point, is like, it exists in a non time space terms kind of thing. So it's a challenge to kind of understand it, process it, and then spit it out as like, here's 2 sentences, this is what's going on. And yeah, I sort of, I guess I'm sort of anchoring myself in a kind of a fluid place or something. Like, it's like when you wake up from a dream, or from your dreams in the morning, or a restful nap or meditation, it's just, you are renewed, you are a different version of who you think you are, so hey, good call back to the name of this podcast. So I'm okay with that, like that being fluid, being like, I'll still react and have to remind myself to just say, it's better to respond to the experience than to react to it. But again, even that language, I'm still working through that, right? But it helps me, even learning from people and these discussions, it'll help me know when to just let things go. And when I'm in the middle of something where I feel passionate about, like, the white privilege thing that's in the news currently, it's just like, I'm still processing it in a way where I can verbalize why I agree or disagree with parts of that. But in the end, it's like, that's the question, like, what are you able to go back to and say, I'm this at my core, and I know this, and I don't need someone else's worldview explained to me or being overlaid over my belief system, and me having then to explain my my actions or my behavior based on this level of someone else's explanation for, you know, what life is or what political or whatever systems are in place. Because it's like that's a waste of my time. That's like getting sucked into watching someone else's TV shows and just like, okay, I'm sitting watching this now, because you just turn it off and walk away, you know, and be who you are in your core, I guess, you know. So
Well, so let me just speak to that for a second, as just about the spiritual bypass portion of your conversation there, Glenn. First of all, bypass in general, whether of a spiritual nature or not, I used an example in my thesis of a non-spiritual bypass about just staying incessantly busy. There are people who love to be busy all the time, who just go, 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 go. That's wonderful if that is, you know, really in alignment with someone's inner world. You know, if you're a person who loves to just go, 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 fantastic. If it, however, is simply a result of, let me stay incessantly busy so I don't have to feel what's going on within me, then is it supportive? Is it helpful to you? You know? And so the thing is not really about whether bypass is even okay or not. Really, it's about, am I doing things in my life? Am I bypassing the emotional stuff of life to my own detriment? Like, I haven't dealt with things. I haven't allowed this thing to come up. And because I haven't, it stands in my way of a new experience that I truly want.
mm-hmm.
Then, I mean, you know, that's rather obvious. That would kind of suck. You know, that would be in my way of something I really want to be or do or have. But it's not really about, is it good or bad? And in fact, we all, you know, certainly in the moment we use bypass not infrequently, because, you know, sometimes we're in a situation, or we're in a work situation, or whatever it happens to be, that, you know, I don't have the, you know, this is not an appropriate time for me really to deal with this. I have to react in the moment, and then, you know, I'll either really process this later or I won't. But, you know, the question is my use of bypass preventing me from becoming something or someone else that I want to be?
Okay. Yeah. I think I need to write it out so I understand it in my own words until it feels right, that I'm writing it like, this is what I understand it to be. It's happening all the time for, as you said, like, it's not always in a spiritual context, but wow.
Well, you know, Glenn, one of the Lesia and I talked about this term, I think, at one point, and I can't speak definitively about unity. I know a little bit about it, but in religious science centers, I've heard 1,000 times, it's all good because it's all God.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, that may or may not be a really deep spiritual truth. I think it probably is. I believe that there is one power behind everything that is ushering life forward. Mm. And based on that, there is spirit. There is God in everyone and everything. Even in the darkest moment, there is still spirit at the core of everything. That's not particularly easy to see, though. And especially when people are being harmed or people are suffering, or, if I simply look at that, okay, someone's over here, they're suffering, big deal, it's all God, it's all good, go ahead and suffer, go ahead and be harmed. Am I making that statement because I've really arrived at that conclusion based on my own understanding and my own inner work? Or am I just saying that because to watch suffering really is so painful for me that it allows me to move that to the side and not consider it, not deal with it, not get involved?
Well, one thing there, like, I think one thing that's kind of missing in the current zeitgeist is there's a lot of identification right now with the victim aspect that any human being can take on at any time. And to look at what's happening, say, across the world or in the next city over, or whatever, that seems to be, there's a victim and there's a perpetrator. The thing is, I think the truest way to deal with that, primarily, before you get to what you may or may not do, is to recognize that God is in both parties, and the person playing the role now of so-called victim is not that forever, and same with the perpetrator or the oppressor or whatever. They're not in that role forever either. We're expanding experiences. If we're God, we're able to roll with it and like learn and maybe hit the wall a couple of times. I don't want to do that anymore, and walk away. But to actually, I think I have this term that I came up with a while ago, like victim brokering, like people who seem to be very good at pointing out, like, there's a victim over there. What are you going to do about it? This guy or this person's getting hammered. What do you, like, there's this thing of like making the public, or making people co-responsible, that I fundamentally disagree with. It really irks me. And I think, like, just honor the fact that a person came into this experience for things that you won't understand, to experience things you won't understand, because you're not them and they're not you. And you being kind of heart and acknowledging the divine in them. And it's like the whole Ho'oponopono thing. It's like, just focus on, this is what I know to be true about that person and that person. I may not agree with one of their behaviors or both, but it's not for me to judge them, right? It's for me to feel good about who I am as much as possible, right? In any situation. So not getting distracted in that way is like always, like Lassie was doing the vertical and the horizontal. So getting stuck on the horizontal, like, what's going on over there? Like, the horizontal goes on forever. It's just like it's nonstop versions of things that may get your attention, but just going back to, like, this is who I am, and aligning with that and being on your best frequency is like, that's what it's all about, so wow.
I wasn't even aware of this.
With that? Well, that's what the cross
aware
means.
that I was doing this horizontal thing. I was thinking like the pull, but yeah.
You were signaling to people who are really in the crosses.
Right.
I was thinking it was a throwback to your Catholic days.
Yeah, it would go the other way though, because Ukrainian.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Plus their cross has the diagonal thing, which I don't get.
Well,
it does and it doesn't. I mean, it depends on who you talk to. I mean, ultimately, it's pretty much the same thing. Ukraine, Catholic, Orthodox, stemming from Byzantium.
I'll be right back. Just give me a sec.
Okay. You know who's been really silent during this entire conversation? The Stuffies.
Yes, they have. They haven't had much to say at all.
On anything. I don't know if they're just sitting there in, just complete agreement. If they are. I see the praying hands. Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, wow, like such amazing conversation. And I think it's funny that Glenn just went right now, because I'm looking at the clock and thinking it's been a good hour, that we've been talking. So it's probably a good time to start thinking about wrapping it up. But I do need Glenn to come back here and be part of this wrapping upness.
Lesia, I'll just say while he's gone, what really comes to mind, maybe as a result of this entire conversation, for me, and certainly Glenn's share in the last little bit, is perception.
Oh,
really.
Yeah.
But isn't it, the farther I go, it just seems like the more it comes back to me that is what's going on, is just perception, is everything that I go through, everything that I see. We talk about truth, but of everything that I see and everything that comes up in my mind and all those things, which of those are truth?
Mm-hmm.
Now there are facts.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that are factual, that do happen or have happened or whatever, but I experience them as my perception of them, whether they're facts or true or not. And in fact, my perception can certainly tweak anything that might be a fact and put it in some different light based on how I look at it, or based on how you look at it. And so, Glenn talking about victims and perpetrators and all those things, maybe one of the best things that we can do is to really be aware of our own perceptions. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of the most positive influences we can have on anything is to be aware of our own perceptions about them, and to make sure that those perceptions are at least deliberately chosen.
Yeah, I feel like we could keep talking for a long time, and there's so much other stuff that would come up. And I mean, perception, I think, is such a great, just rich, layered topic. And I think for me, it's something that is really at the forefront right now because of conversations that I am having with Glenn, with people we know, with what's happening in the media, with what's happening in my discussion group on Tuesdays, where, I mean, spiritual bypass was a very heated topic for a while, and you coming in was so fantastic, because for a lot of people, it clarified some things enough so that they felt okay in moving forward from sort of where they were. One of the things for me, and this I would like to talk about at another time, not today. So I'm just like a little bit, pulling the door ajar, but not opening it fully, is and I'm going to say the concept of white privilege. Because this is something that is another supercharged topic right now. And when I asked about it in the Let's Talk forum through Global Truth Center, the response that came back was unsatisfying for me. it just, I saw a bunch of nodding heads, and I listened to what was said, and I just thought, I don't feel any more enlightened or moved in a certain direction than I did, before I asked the question. If anything, I feel more ill at ease with what that concept means. And the whole thing for me so far, and it's only been a couple of weeks that I've really been putting much thought into it at all, is it real? Or is it so incredibly perceived by so many from out of a place of consensus that it now has taken on a life of its own, under the guise of being a real thing? And because so many people agree on that, stuff is happening because of it. And so what Glenn said, 5-10 minutes ago, what we've been talking about, what we talk about in the Science of Mind and Spirit teachings in class, Sunday celebration, whatever, that there is this one incredible, amazing energy that is the foundation for everyone and everything, that everyone is it in its entirety, but expressing as a unique, individualized expression of it, to the degree that we allow for that expression, which is always happening, to actually flow through and as us. What do I want to think from? What do I want to show up from? What do I want to focus on? And what do I want, is it is another whole conversation, because it just, again, we're at an hour, and this just, I don't want to open the door all the way, but it really, I don't know enough to know what I think, to know what I don't feel like I don't understand enough, but that I am so curious that it even actually kind of came up as a potential thesis topic for me for a class coming up, where I don't even have to write a thesis, but if I do choose to write it, I can apply it as credit to, the degree that I'm working on. So
that is way overachievement.
but
I'm going to write a thesis whether I need one or not.
But it's something that feels like it's bubbling up, it's just, it's bubbling up, and it has found me. And what's out there so far leaves me feeling very unsatisfied, and seeing so many people nodding their heads and behaving a certain way in agreement, because this is just kind of the blanket statement or blanket way of thinking, whether it's founded in fact or not. There's something that just isn't sitting.
I think perception hits that right on the head, Lesia. It's and I mean, my perceptions are true for me. That is the way I experience life. And I wanna. This just came to mind, and I'm gonna read. It's really not a long quote at all, but this is something that I think really speaks to perception and what we're talking about, though, and the way I look at things or get involved with them on this physical level, or if I'm able to stand back and look at something. And this was from a trip to San Diego last fall, and it's there was a gentleman who had an exhibit at the San Diego Art Museum. He's a Spanish artist named Rafael Cano, and he did a group of paintings, and they're just, to see them from a little distance, they're lit up and they're beautiful, and he does this resin and wax somehow and overlays them, but then when you get up close to them, they're kind of ominous looking, almost scary in a way, because you'd see for instance a busted blood vessel in an eyeball, and veins running through skin that you couldn't see when you were standing back from them. And his quote says, or not his quote, but it's just like a little placard that was describing his work. And it says that his technique, using multiple layers of resin and wax, results in a translucency that has both visual and spiritual ramifications, embodying the conflict between the material and non-material duality of the human condition. Okay, fair enough. Now here's the catcher for this for me. His paintings appear chaotic when viewed up close, yet serene from afar.
Mm.
And I think that is life, and that is perception, really. You know, it's am I right there in the middle of that thing and, you know, screaming against it, or do I have the ability to stand back and look at something, to observe it, to see, you know, how do I really feel about this? Or am I simply drawn in? Am I simply sucked in from the up close, in your face experience?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway.
Kelly, will you come back and have another conversation someday?
Sure. Absolutely. It's always fun.
Oh, this has been great. Okay, well, before we say goodbye, we have a bit of our own in your face experience for you, just to lighten things up a little bit. So we don't have a a name yet for this segment of our podcast, but today, I don't know, like
what
did
you call it?
I call it? The something inquisition. Intuitive inquisition.
Yeah.
It's a 60-second rapid fire. Don't put a lot of thought into it. Just answer the questions.
The less thinking, the better, probably.
Mr. Bershinsky.
Okay.
Lasia,
Okay, I have a timer set.
Yeah.
You have 60 seconds.
And you're counting how many questions he answers?
I'm going to count, yes, because it's important. Okay,
right.
so
the
time starts now.
Okay, pick a number between 2 and 113.
11.
Okay, what is best, Monty Python, Saturday Night Live, or Kids in the Hall?
Saturday Night Live.
Okay, Grimm's Fairy Tales or Aesop's Fables?
Grimm's.
Smarties or M&M's?
M&M's.
What is your favorite movie about space?
Star Wars.
Okay, salty or sweet?
Salty.
Okay, forgiving or forgetting?
Both.
Your favorite Game of Thrones character?
Don't know any of them.
Okay, what is your favorite plant-based meal?
Polenta.
Okay, singing in the rain or getting caught in the rain?
Oh, getting caught in the rain.
Okay, sing along a Sound of Music or the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Sound of Music.
Oh, and
okay.
Right.
And this is your bonus.
11 questions.
Okay, and one bonus, because this is for me. What is your favorite band from Oklahoma, and how many times have you seen Other Lives? They're a band from Oklahoma, so.
Oh, Other Lives is from Oklahoma. Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
Okay. Never mind. Okay, and the other one I didn't get to for you would have been Croupier or Casino. The movie, which one's better?
Casino.
Yeah.
I have some personal, mostly because I have some personal contacts in that movie.
Okay, cool.
Oh.
All right.
Croupier is great, though.
So 11 questions answered. And now you get to
11, and one of my answers was 11.
Yes.
One.
Yes, 11.
Wow.
Okay.
So since this is the first week of this, or the first, I guess I am first on this challenge, at least for now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but you know what? It's going to be different every time. So you just, honey bunch.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So tell Kelly what he's won, or not.
Okay. Well, you have won. One of our favorite books is The Deeper Meaning of Life by John Lloyd and Douglas Adams, who wrote
Douglas Adams and John Lloyd.
Yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide, and it's a dictionary of things that there aren't any words for yet.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, and you immediately have broken the paradigm, because we're going to go to the 11th entry on this book, and there are not 11 on this page. So,
what's happening now?
I'm going to randomly pick one, I guess. So, I'm going to pick this one. Berry Willock, which is a noun. Berriwillock. A berry willock. That's an unknown workmate who writes all the best on your leaving card.
Okay, I love that.
It'll just get sillier. Anyway, you're the first one. So
now you must use that word in a sentence. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. It actually, what came to mind when you said that and when you read the definition, is something I do with employees, where I do a little handwritten note now and then, because they have to come to me in order, it's almost like a permission slip to leave work.
Yeah.
And I'll leave a little handwritten note when they've done something particularly well or something like that, but makes a pretty big splash, actually. I've had people almost in tears over it, and then I've had some of them return to me over time, where they leave it on my desk or something, to kind of return the sentiment. But
so then Kelly would not be classified as a Berry Willock.
No.
According to that.
Okay, is someone going to pray us out? I don't know.
I wasn't going to be a part of this, but that's super cute.
Okay. Well, you said he likes pranks.
oh, that's funny.
Okay, wow. So, that's it for today. I mean, thank you very much for everyone for joining us on for our first official podcast episode of Who Do You Think You Are? And thank you to Kelly Bershinsky for joining us. Thank you, Glenn Sheridan, for co-hosting. And thank you to the Stuffies for being such a captive audience this entire time. And because we had some music at the beginning that was written by someone, thank you to Vasco Lourenco for that funky groovy tune that we're using as our intro and outro. And thank you to Mr. Douglas Adams and John Lloyd for their amazing book, The Deeper Meaning of Lift, and all of those definitions of those words for things that I guess don't exist, but actually are place names in the world somewhere, right? Because that's the whole
Yes.
deal. Okay.
Our favorite one is abalene, which is the pleasing coolness on the other side of the pillow.
Yeah. And Alana, when she learned that word when she was really little, and she'd be so hot in the summertime, this little, 2.5-year-old or whatever, and she'd say to Glenn, Tatu, which is in Ukrainian for dad, I want abalene. Put her head down. So cute. Anyway. All right. Well, that's it for today. So thank you.
Okay.
I look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Had a great time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, Kelly, actually,
Bye-bye.
if someone wants to get in touch with you, is there anything that you want to share with the world? Or not?
If someone wants to get in touch with me, they can do that through email at kbershinsky1@gmail.com.
Okay.
And that's all for right now. I'll have a website coming up and some things like that, but just email for now.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you very much. We'll have that somewhere written so that people can see it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mwah.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lesia Kohut, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping us make this podcast a reality. Video editing, Lori Savage, Lesia Kohut. Music, Vasco Lourenco, copyright 123rf.com. Background illustration, sakkmesterke, copyright 123rf.com. Graphic design, Lesia Kohut. For more information on this podcast and our Lesia Kohut Soul Excavator, please visit www.lesiakohut.com. Thank you for listening to Who Do You Think You Are?